So guys, I just want to thank everybody for joining us. We've got Andy Hoffman from Miles Franklin back on the line, and my contributor Rory is joining us as well. Andy, hello.
Hey there, guys. Lots to talk about today, that's for sure.
Boy, is there ever. Rory, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Rory, as you know, I've been on vacation, took the family to the belly of the beast, Washington, D.C. over the past week. And I just want to start by telling people just a little bit about that. We went last year as well. And I did a video last year from the Lincoln Memorial, just sort of expressing, how I felt to be there and that, my heart was buoyed by our opportunities to take the Republic back. And this year my experience, although not negative, was different. Maybe I was just more naive last year, but this year I really felt, Andy, like the juggernaut that is Washington, D.C., the bubble of criminality that is that town, is beyond hope. It cannot be changed. We took a tour of the Capitol, and I really felt like it was, instead of being a part of our working republic, I felt like I was in a museum. You've got the Pentagon nearby, which the symbology of the building is daunting. And then you've got the IRS now saying that they've lost 50% of the emails related to the Lois Lerner case. You've got the Federal Reserve. Of course, I videotaped that from out front. And then I'm going to do a video. It's going to take me a while to get a video done, but I'm going to do a video about something very powerful that I saw there. We took a tour of the George Washington Masonic National Memorial. And it blew me away. And now anybody that knows a little bit about Freemasonry would probably know some of this information, but I saw and took pictures of things that I was even shocked by about the secret societies and their role in the formation of our government early on, and the role that they continued to play and do continue to play to this day. It blew me away, so I'll try to do that video here in the next week or two. But Andy, the point is that Washington, D.C. really is the belly of the beast, and I felt like our republic at this point is nothing but a fading memory, and I wish I was wrong. What's your
Whenever it gets to the point where the politicians are employees, where that's their full-time job, all they start to care about is getting reelected, as opposed to when it's new and there are people who actually have jobs and are trying to contribute to society in positive ways. Once they become politicians, then it's, the whole thing changes. And then the other thing is that whenever they need money and they have the ability to go on a fiat currency system, they inevitably do, despite history showing that it always fails. And in this particular case, thanks to all the modern technology that was brought into the world, it enabled trade to become global and eventually the fiat system to become global. And as a result, unlike all the other 500, 600 times where the currencies collapsed, this time it's going to be intertwined among all of the world's economies. And I mean all. There's not a single currency, a single country that's going to survive this until we get to the next coming, which could be sometime down the road.
We talk a lot about the Mockingbird mainstream media, Andy and Rory, and we like to say that we're the antidote to corporate propaganda. And when I say that, I'm referring to the fact that, most of the major media in this country is owned by 5 or 6 major corporations, multinational, international conglomerates and corporations that feed the people their news. Andy, did you hear about this death in a private jet crash, the death of Richard Gilder Rockefeller? And the reason I ask is not that I think that you think that there's anything to it, but I wanted just to share this with you guys. CNN last night, I was watching as I was running on the treadmill there at the club, and CNN covered it briefly and referred to his father, David Rockefeller, as, quote, a billionaire philanthropist, end quote. That was it. Not the founder of the CFR, not the founder of the Trilateral Commission, not the founder of helping the United Nations get kicked off by donating the land in New York. He's a billionaire philanthropist. And I think that really sums it up, what we're up against, Andy. The Mockingbird mainstream media will not tell the people what's happening to their dollar because the Mockingbird mainstream media is protecting the puppet masters like David Rockefeller, a philanthropist.
Well, I don't focus on that aspect. Obviously there's some bad people out there. A lot of it is speculative as to who exactly is doing what. I'm just focusing personally on the financial damage that they have done. And I'm not saying Rockefeller specifically, I'm saying the whole powers that be, which for the most part is bankers and politicians, have created a system which is on the verge of collapse right now. The entire world economy is probably at its cumulative low point since the 2008 crash. And I'm not talking about in the ensuing weeks, like when the market was falling for a few weeks in the late 2008. I'm talking about the actual global economy. Forget markets. This is the most debt we've ever had, the highest inflation. This is the worst GDP growth. This is the most money printing, and of course, you throw in the most draconian government and all these wars that are cropping up, in large part because of the inflation and the currency debasement. And you realize just how much longer can we go before something terrible happens. Whether it's Abenomics or the negative interest rates in Europe, or when eventually Janet Yellen, probably not this week, but eventually, maybe later this year, Janet Yellen admits that the economy is not recovering and that there's no fallback option. I mean, it's very, very scary because it has to happen, and it's probably going to happen soon.
Do you think some people in Australia are upset over having $360 million stolen from them a couple of days ago?
I'm sure they're not thrilled with it, but I do know that they put out an absolutely horrifying unemployment report last week as well. I mean, there's no place that's immune, there's no place that's recovering, and there's no place that's going to recover. All we're going to see is higher and higher in debt and higher inflation until eventually the system goes. And if they think that they can keep crisis away simply by manipulating markets, they're going to be wrong because they've been wrong every time they've tried that throughout history.
Yeah, Rory's referring to the $360 million that the Australian government has seized from what they're calling, quote, dormant bank accounts, Andy. That's bank accounts that have been idle for 3 years or more. They're considering that to be abandoned money, never mind the pensioners that maybe are saving that or have saved it. In Australia, they're just going to steal it.
Are they talking about unclaimed money or simply you haven't done a transaction in 3 years, so we're taking it?
The latter. Dormant accounts with no activity for 3 years or more. This is just news coming out in the last week. And, it all ties together. Everything ties together. And I know, again, people aren't going to hear this from the mainstream Mockingbird media because they're controlled. And I just want to quickly go back to David Rockefeller and talk about the fact that the Rockefeller family and the Rothschilds and whoever is a part of this cartel that owns the central bank in this country, the Federal Reserve. And David Rockefeller, for his part, is proud of it. And I just want to quote him from his autobiography, Memoirs, in which he says, "Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I am proud of it," end quote. The reason I want to bring that back into the fold here, Andy, is because it's no longer conspiracy theory. Everybody's talking about it. Men like Peter Schiff, Paul Craig Roberts, you, me. It's in the wide open. We all know what the problem is right now, and Paul Craig Roberts says it's the Fed.
Absolutely. And, the Fed is owned by the banks. I mean, it's not like it's the Bilderbergs that own the Fed. They have a charter. They're owned by the banks. They're independent, and therefore the banks run the country. Because obviously, the only reason that the country hasn't already collapsed is because the banks are getting their way with all the money printing. And but ultimately they will fail. The Goldman Sachs and the J.P. Morgans will fail, just like all the other major banks have throughout history in these systems. It's just a matter of time. And if they are going to, look, they are now stealing money more than ever. What you're talking about in Australia is just one way. The negative interest rates is another. We already pretty much have negative interest rates because the banks pay nothing, and they're charging unbelievable amount of fees for absolutely everything. They're limiting the amount of things you could do. They're saying that they may bail you in. Sometimes they may freeze your accounts unless they get bailed out. Inflation's eating your money. So, I mean, the system is unsustainable. The banks are insolvent. And at some point, in the not too distant future, you're going to see them go under and a new regime will start up. It's going to be very painful. It's going to take a lot of time. But why people still have their money in the bank when they see things like negative interest rates and money being stolen from dormant accounts and bail-ins, it is beyond me. You don't get paid anything to be in the bank. You don't get privileges for being in the bank. You certainly don't get the zero interest rates. Only the banks get the zero interest rates, which they don't use to lend. They use it to speculate in markets that are propped up by the government.
Before Rory asks another question here, I just want you to flush that out. Let's touch on that negative interest rate news. It's a big deal, and I feel like, with everything that's going on, let's just do a brief recap off the top of my head. The borders are wide open. There's an absolute crisis with illegal immigrants flowing in, and the DHS is disallowing border agents from saying anything or taking any pictures under the threat of criminal prosecution. Meanwhile, Iraq is falling back into the hands of God knows who, some Al-Qaeda associate group, and it's absolutely imploding. Russia is de-dollarizing, and on the back of all this, we see negative interest rates. What does that mean, Andy? Help us understand how that signals the beginning of the end.
It's like I talk about the horrible headlines in my pieces every week, and you just mentioned three right there, and forget the Ukraine, which is really getting much worse now. That's just in one single day. I mean, what's going on with Russia and China? I mean, telling the world that we are going to no longer use the dollar for a lot of things, and we hope to eventually not use it at all. I mean, how much more of a bearish statement could you have for the dollar and for what the Fed policy is going to have to be going forward? Then you have Iraq. I mean, we just left Iraq after 10 years, mission accomplished. We may actually be going right back into Iraq now, and I guarantee you if we do, it's going to be a far uglier situation than last time around. I mean, people like to characterize these people as terrorists, they're Al-Qaeda. No, they're just mad Iraqis. We went in there under false pretenses, killed 500,000 Iraqis, admitted afterward, well, you know what, that we shouldn't have gone in there in the first place. These are pissed off people. And if they do wind up taking over Baghdad or some of the oil refineries, which are already, incredibly tight market, we could see $150 barrel in oil this year. But then you talk about negative interest rates. I mean, again, people are talking about the Bank of Japan pushing the envelope by having 10 rounds of QE and then saying, well, now we're going to double the money supply in 2 years, and look where that's got them. But what the European Central Bank just did, and they're just getting started, by the way, they said we have a lot more coming, is they are going to charge the central banks that borrow from them at 15 basis points, they're going to charge them 10 basis points to hold money at the central bank, because that's what the banks do. They're insolvent. They don't lend the money out. They just either put it in the markets that are supported by the government, or they put it back into the ECB itself. So now that they're saying you can't do that, they're going to be even more insolvent because they're going to have losses that they must eat on 10 basis points, or more likely they're just going to pass them along to depositors. So on top of already getting no interest rate and having bail-ins and all those kind of things, they are probably going to have to pay money, and some of them to keep the money in, and that's going to mean people are going to take their money out of the banking system. And where do you think they're going to go with it? Some of it are going to go to gold and silver. I mean, why wouldn't you? People say gold and silver pay no interest. You shouldn't own them. Well, guess what? Now they pay more interest than some bank accounts are going to pay.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I just want to flush out this Iraq situation because you wrote about it in your recent article, 300 million versus 7 billion. And you wrote about it quite eloquently, recapping the flawed intelligence that got us into the Iraq war, blaming Saddam Hussein, partially at least for 9/11, which is obviously poppycock, also claiming that he had weapons of mass destruction. You note that the Al-Qaeda spin-off ISIS captured Mosul, Iraq's second largest city, and along with it a refinery processing 310,000 barrels of oil per day. And I guess here's my thing, Andy. What do you make of the fact that this Al-Qaeda spin-off has, in such a short time, done so much damage and murdered so many people, and meanwhile this government has built, I think, the biggest embassy on planet Earth at the cost of some, I think, $1 billion. It sits in the heart of Baghdad. It's the American embassy. And Obama has not made any attempt to bring in any support for that embassy in terms of troops. And believe me, I'm the last person on the earth who wants to see more boots on the ground of American soldiers. But look, you've got American citizens, you've got military, you've got American people in that embassy, which should have never been built. You guys, this could make Benghazi look like child's play. Andy, what's your take on this? On this sitting president really just sitting back on his laurels at this point, waiting. He's playing wait and see.
Well, the situation's only really a week old, so it's it's going to take time to formulate a policy and figure out what the heck to do over there. But the fact is, look, Iraq was a country of factions that was cobbled together by the Allies, and we supported Saddam Hussein and put him in power and said keep everyone together. Well, then we took him out. So guess what? The three groups, the Shiite, Sunni, and Kurds, all hate each other, and now they're having a civil war.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's no different than what's going on in Libya or Syria or any of these other places, Ukraine, that we go in and try to do these things with. And who knows what's going to happen? What will we do? Will we go in and actually put people back in there after we just took them out? I don't know. But the thing is, if we don't, the people who are these ISIS people, they may very well take over some of the oil capacity and cause oil prices to spike. And frankly, that's all we care about. We don't care about anything else. So really, I mean, I think Obama is going to be forced to make a decision soon because these guys have vowed to take over Baghdad. And the Iraqi army is obviously not much of an army at all. So they probably will take over Baghdad unless we go in there and support. So, I mean, it's just one of many black swans. I mean, I did an audio blog this week called The End of the Black Swan, almost, meaning almost nothing surprises me anymore. I wouldn't call Iraq, I mean, who would have thought last week that Iraq could be the beginning of World War III? But it's just one of many things that pop up in a world that's been so destroyed by inflation and debt, and in our case, imperialism. So, who knows what'll happen? I mean, Obama really, I don't know what he's going to do, but he's not going to win either way. It's going to be a major problem, whatever he decides to do.
All right. Well, we'll bridge back into economics and gold and silver precious metals here in a second. Rory can take it away. But I'm just stunned by the fact that, and I know the elite love to operate under this order out of chaos playbook that they use. And I also know that Zygmunt Brzezinski's grand chessboard is at work and at play here. I also know that the neocons and what they've done since 9/11 is at play here in the Middle East. But I think what is absolutely horrifying is that if I'm as a layperson and you guys with the same bed of knowledge, if we all know that the puppet is better than the puppet you don't know, then why in God's name did they go and they topple Saddam Hussein, who was playing ball with them? They toppled Gaddafi, who you'll remember, Andy, after 9/11 said, oh, come on in, bring your inspectors, whatever you want. I'm on your side. I'm not on the side of the terrorists. Gaddafi played ball. They topple all of these leaders that were really friendly to the West, friendly to this criminal government. And now what they have is absolute chaos. It's absolute chaos in Syria. It's chaos in Libya. It's chaos now in Iraq. And it's stunning. You have to believe that this was part of a larger plan, or these guys are literally criminally insane and just didn't see this coming.
What's going on in the world is total chaos right now, and what we're going to see in the coming years will surprise and shock everyone. I don't think anyone in the powers that be, the politicians, have any clue what the next day is going to look like. And I think anyone who believes that there's some grand plan behind taking down the economy or changing it or having new currencies is crazy. I think every single day we're talking about politicians and bankers waking up and saying, how can we prevent the collapse another day? And there's just too many things closing in on them, from the economic perspective, from the political perspective, the social unrest that's everywhere. I mean, to believe that all these things, that the Ukraine and Iraq, and all the social unrest we've seen in Turkey and South Africa, Brazil, Argentina, Thailand, you name it. And it's only a matter of time before it happens someplace much closer to home.
All right, well, we'll sum this up with your words. I think my point here is that this government has destabilized the world since 9/11, and I think they've done it on purpose. And it's really horrifying because when you destabilize the entire world like that, you get China and Russia de-dollarizing, and you summed up in your article, quote, this week's news that Al-Qaeda is mounting a major offensive to take over Iraq could well prove a death blow to the global economy and with it, American hegemony. And I'm going to end quote there because that really sums it up. American hegemony is on display here for the world to see, and everything this criminal government touches seems to turn to crap, and this American hegemony is on display for all to see. It is the emperor that wears no clothes, and the whole world can see it. Now, Rory, I know that you had some important questions here for Andy before we lose him, so we can turn back here to economics.
Well, thank you. I wanted to make a quick comment about Iraq, Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi in particular. And both of those men said that they were going to stop using the dollar to purchase oil, and then all of a sudden they get Tomahawk missiles dropped on them. Andy, how do you think the pricing mechanism is going to play out over the next 2 or 3 years with all of these new Eastern markets coming online, as far as the Shanghai Gold Exchange, Dubai, Moscow, Singapore, and of course the market in India? How do you see that all playing out?
Well, when the petrodollar was created in the 70s, it was a much more U.S. centric world. I mean, the economy wise, now it's not. Now the U.S. is a much smaller percentage of global economic activity, and as a result, people don't need to use the dollar as much as they did just anyway. Usage of the dollar has been falling for the last 15 years, and while it's still the reserve currency, it's becoming less and less so. And obviously, when you see the BRICS getting together and all these financing agreements with China, and now, of course, China and Russia actively seeking to de-dollarize everything, you know that the end is nigh for the petrodollar. But the whole point is that I think a lot of people spend so much time focusing on the petrodollar as if that's the only product that it matters that people use dollars for. I mean, oil is just one of thousands of things that people pay for in trade. The point is not that the petrodollar is going away, simply that international trade with the U.S. dollar is declining and will continue to decline until the U.S. is no longer the reserve currency. It could happen with a whimper, where you just look up 20 years from now and U.S. reserves are not 65% of nations' holdings; it's 40%, which would be a catastrophic decline in the standard of living and the purchasing power of the dollar. Or you could have a major crisis of confidence that goes along with it due to a war, spiking oil prices, plunging stock markets, QE, you name it. But the fact is, the petrodollar is just one aspect of the end of the dollar hegemony. I mean, everyone has seen that chart before of the history of reserve currencies. First was Portugal and Spain and England and France, and now it's us, and it's our turn to cede it to the Chinese. And it's not going to be smooth, but when you look up, let's say 50 years from now, the chart will show that China's on the top, and the loss of purchasing power and the standard of living in the United States, especially in a nation which has the average person has no savings and unemployment is sky high, is going to be really catastrophic to watch.
Do you think that the pricing mechanism for gold and silver and palladium, platinum, do you think that that's moving east as well?
Of course, it has to. That's where all the trade is. I mean, Westerners don't buy gold. Westerners don't sell gold either. The only gold that is being bought and sold is in the paper exchanges, and by now it's becoming so obvious that the system is rigged. I mean, look at the London gold fix. They're accusing it of manipulation. They got rid of the silver fix. There's all kinds of allegations about what's going on in the COMEX. The president of the London Metal Exchange just yesterday said that he thinks that gold is manipulated. So, I mean, at some point soon, it's going to be pretty obvious that when, for instance, the Shanghai Exchange, I think that physical deliveries there are something like 50 or 100 times more than the COMEX. The COMEX is not going to be the pricing mechanism of the world, probably a lot sooner than people think. More likely, you're going to wake up in the morning here in the States and the price will have already moved, as opposed to now where the world waits with bated breath for what happens when the COMEX opens and the naked shorts come in. So yes, it won't be too long. Will it be 6 months? Will it be 1 week? Will it be 2 years? I don't know. But in time, you're going to see the Chinese market be where gold is priced.
I want to ask a follow-up question on that, Andy. You did write in that same article, and you just noted that. You said in the article, the CEO of the London Metal Exchange notes that the archaic gold fix is, quote, open to manipulation, end quote. Well, we all know that. Obviously, it's been proved with the Barclays. Well, it's been proved long before the Barclays situation with that one trader that they would blame all of this on. But my question to you is this: with the silver fix ending here in August, where does that leave us? Where do you think it leaves us? Are you going to go to some bogus Kitco pricing or some bogus Jeffrey Christian CPM group pricing? Or, what honestly do you think that they could possibly use, or what will happen? I mean, I just don't think that the price is going to trade freely and the market will decide. It won't be allowed to decide.
Well, even to this day, for all that I do, am confused about how this gold fix works. I mean, it's really just talking about people like central banks who are buying absolutely gargantuan amounts of gold and silver. The average person, it's not that complicated. I mean, I didn't even know there was a quote silver fix. No one's ever spoke about it until they're saying now that it's over. And again, we're just talking about the biggest buyers and sellers in the world. And frankly, it's so comical because what big sellers are there? The central banks have stopped selling, right? We know that they've been buyers. We know the Chinese and Russians are buying. So who in the heck would be selling? And when you talk about silver, there isn't even any silver to sell. That's why the silver fix probably has been no big deal, because there's no supply out there. There's literally no supply out there of silver. Only the new silver that gets produced by the mines, much of which is taken up for industrial production. So, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in the near future, but I can tell you this. It's a guarantee that in time, we're not going to wake up and watch gold and silver be priced in the Western markets. It's going to move east. It's going to go physical, and it may do it in a shocking, sudden type event when people realize that physical is just not there. Look, we've had shortages before. 2008, 2011, 2013. They get closer and closer in spacing, and maybe the next shortage. Maybe the next shortage is because they smashed gold to 1,000 and there's no gold left, or maybe it's because it's a short squeeze and it goes to 2,000. But that next shortage, in my opinion, is going to be the one we never recover from.
Yeah, I think we have time probably for one more question here before we let Andy go. Rory, do you have another question?
I do. I want to follow up with that and ask about with the collapse in mining. Where is it going to come from? I mean, that's
right.
I don't know. I've been asking that question for a long time, haven't I, Sean? I mean, it seems like I ask all the time and of everyone.
You ask twice in every interview.
Well, I mean, and it's because of simple math. It's obviously came from the Western central banks. And I say Western, it's not all of them. It's not the Germans that are selling. I mean, heck, a lot of the German gold may be gone already, as they're learning right now, because they kept it in custody with the Fed. But when you talk about Western gold that was being used to fund the physical demand, it's the United States. It's obviously the UK also, but the UK has nothing left. So it's the United States. They sold their gold. They either sold it, they leased it, they swapped it, you call it that. There's no other way to make up for the gap between the physical demand and the physical supply that's been out there. So, my view is Eric Sprott's view. The math has been done, starting with Frank Veneroso. The only possible way that the price, that I shouldn't forget the price, that the physical demand could have been satisfied this past decade was by a dishoarding of the Fort Knox gold. End of story. And that's why they won't let themselves get audited. That's why they won't let the Germans into the Fed to inspect their gold holdings. And that's why when they ask for it to be repatriated, they don't send it back because it's not there anymore. Again, you talk about the emperor no clothes. There's no more naked emperor than the Fort Knox, the whole treasury with the Fort Knox gold that doesn't exist.
Well, Andy, I know that we're up against the clock here. You've got a big day with family ahead, so we're going to let you go. But I noticed not too long ago you guys were running an ad on your website for those Perth Mint crocodiles, which I think are just a really beautiful coin. Do you want to tell people about that offer and maybe anything else?
Well, sure. I mean, when you talk about in this weird market where demand in the Western world, forget the Eastern world where it's soaring, but in the Western world has been lax, you're able to get a variety of these specialty products, pretty close to melt value. We've had like the Peregrine Falcons with the Royal Canadian Mint, the saltwater crocodiles with the Perth Mint. Anytime you could buy one of these specialty products like Maple Leafs at around the melt value, at around a generic, then you do it. Once the premiums get too high, I don't recommend it because then you're in the numismatic world, in which case you need to be an expert. But irrespective, I don't even care about that stuff now. People just need to realize it's time to get out of this, this inflated dollars that are now going to be zero or negative interest rates, and just get into real money. I mean, how much more do you have to be hit over the head that not only is the system going down, but as you said, the mining at these prices, you're way below the cost of production. Even if they wanted to smash the price down further, and I frankly don't think they want to, because they're going to just incite a big physical swarm of buying. I don't think they can get it much lower because they're so below the cost of production. I mean, you're talking about, never in history have you been in a situation where you have such limited downside on the only real way to protect yourself. But that's why we do the podcast, and that's why we write, and hopefully we can get 1 or 2% of the people to realize this. Look, people, just give us a call, Miles Franklin. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. We're doing all kinds of promotions. It's 800-822-8080, and we'll tell you all about the kookaburras and the crocodiles and the peregrine falcons, and hopefully you'll make a decision to protect yourself with some real money.
All right, Andy, just a couple last words. Do you want to tell us what you're working on?
What am I working on? I'm working on my first Father's Day right now of my life. So that's what I'm working on. I have so many things that are lined up for Monday. I'll just have to see what happens, because, look, the Fed is meeting on Wednesday, right? Is this going to be Jimmy Shaker Day for Janet Yellen, where she admits the tapering doesn't work? I don't know. Probably not, but it's coming soon.
All right, Andy. We look forward to reading all your articles over there at milesfranklin.com. I want to thank Rory for joining us. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and visiting us at sgtreport.com. I hope you have an exceptionally happy week despite all of the bad news that seems to be coming at us quicker than we can track it. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Andy.